Access to share. How are you?
Hi. Ooh. What am I doing? Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Mute this.
Jack, am I letting people in or you'll be letting people in?
Karen, I'll let people in.
Okay, everybody, we're going to get started so that we can end on time. Martin Brodsky has been an attorney with me. We're going on 20 years together. And he's still running strong, just as I am. He does a lot of my buyers, a lot of my sellers, a lot of my tough situations, including my short sales. So he's very knowledgeable in all aspects. Today, we're working on the buyer side. So we're going to go through the contract. I'm going to start with the contract so that he can just go over the contract with us. But then afterwards, I'll go in how to do things in command. But right now, let's concentrate solely on the contract and getting the contract right. So Marty, I'll pull up a contract.
Oh, okay. We got more people coming?
Yeah.
All right, so you're gonna share your screen on the contract. That works. Oh, my video is not going, huh? All right, let's see. How do I start my video?
Did I share or I don't think I shared. Let me
Okay.
Jack, I need to be able to share my screen. That's Jack.
This is a side question. Have you been experiencing slowness with Paragon?
I've not been on Paragon too much, baby.
Okay.
Let me call the office. They're not picking up.
Karen, I'm sorry, you should be able to go right now.
Did I freeze for a minute there?
There you go.
Alrighty, let's go into. Let me pull up this one. See that? Marty, you good with it?
I am good with it. It's an awful looking page. We don't need page one. Yeah, let's go to there.
All right. Well, page one, they need to know what that page is. That page is important because they need an attorney.
Yes.
This is your opinion 26. It says that if you don't get a buyer, the contract becomes liable after 3 days. An attorney can extend this contract or shorten it. Moving on.
All right. Does everyone know what attorney review is? I know it sounds stupid to ask that question, but real simply, attorney review is really the, the next level of negotiating. And we can change anything in attorney review. Purchase price, close date, mortgage amount, if the TV is included. When you see offers that say we waive appraisal, waive inspection, we change that in attorney review all the time. And a deal can die in attorney review for no reason, right? While you're in attorney review, either side has the right to cancel unilaterally, right? So when we're a buyer, we want to try to get in and out of attorney review as quickly as possible, because we don't even have a right of first refusal. If someone else came along and outbids us, we can just get a kill letter. I was honestly in the middle of typing a kill letter right when this Zoom session started, because we were in our third day of review. Another offer came in that was better and waived everything. And I'm just sending a kill letter, right? So for our buyers, we want to get in and out of review as quickly as possible. Now, a lot of my changes in attorney review are because there were things in the original contract that either were not drafted correctly or that our buyer did not understand at the time that they were agreeing to it, okay? So by me doing my attorney review letter and making changes, sometimes it blows up a deal, right? Like if the buyer said, I waived appraisal, but then my letter says, no, we take it back. We can't afford to waive appraisal. You can see where a seller would say, you know, this is bait and switch BS. I'm canceling and I'm going with somebody else, right? So, or I just make so many changes that attorney review stays open for so long that another offer comes in and steals it. So what I want to do is go through the contract with you now so you understand why each item is important, so we know how to put it together properly so that my review becomes really quick and we get in and out of review as quickly as possible. Now, Karen, is there any way to do like show full page instead of just a few lines? You know what I mean? Even if you zoom out a little bit, you know, on the document and make the document smaller, we'll still be able to read it.
How to figure that out.
I'm just trying to
Hey,
see.
Karen, it'd be easier if you download it and then open it as a PDF.
Download it, okay.
Yep. Go
Thank
to
you.
download. Yes, ma'am, right there. And then just open it and then it'll open a new tab for you.
Okay, now see where the says 100% in the middle, just shrink it. Shrink. One more.
One more?
Yeah, that's good. All right, so let's go to this next page. All right, and get rid of all the table of content stuff. Just show me with the lines. Just scroll down a little bit more on that. Okay, so first thing you fill out is the buyer's name. First thing we get wrong is the buyer's name, right? So where that confusion often occurs is that you might have a pre-approval letter from Loan Depot that has one person's name on it, right? Husband, wife, whatever, on the pre-approval letter, because the finances are just going to be based on that person's income alone. However, they are married and both of them plan to own the property. Okay, so what a lot of agents do is they make the buyer's name the same as the pre-approval letter name. From a legal standpoint, that's not proper. It should be that both husband and wife are buying the property, right? Or husband, whatever the combination may be. If you wanted to make a distinction for your clients so they feel better that only one of them is required to apply, then you could go down to paragraph 43, which is all the way at the end of the contract, the big giant blank, and just put in there that as per the pre-approval letter, only, Jane is on the application. But when I do attorney review, my first question to this person, Rachel, would be, are you single or married? Right? Her answer is, I'm married. Well, does your spouse intend to own this? Yeah, right? Because understand this, under New Jersey matrimonial law, if you live in a house as your principal marital residence, your spouse owns part of that house, whether they're listed on the deed or not. So therefore, because the spouse owns part of the house, even if they're invisible, as a general rule, the mortgage company will require the spouse to sign the mortgage document acknowledging that their part of the house, no matter how small, also goes to guarantee the loan, so that if in this case, Rachel defaulted on the loan, the bank could take the house away and sell it and get their money back, right? So everyone with an ownership interest has to sign. So we can either add the spouse's name to the contract, or if Rachel tells me my spouse specifically is not going to own this house, right? They have judgments, liens, lawsuits. We want them to heck not owning anything. That's great. I can do that, but they're going to sign something that's called a quitclaim deed that says, I agree, I don't own any part of that house. And then they don't need to to sign anything for the mortgage company. Did I create a lot of confusion for people, or is everyone following?
No, that's great.
All right. One thing I just want to make a distinction, and Loan Depot can chime in if they feel like it, is everybody thinks of, you get a mortgage, and if you've been to a closing, you got 100 pages there that get signed, that the whole thing is a mortgage. And it's really a mislabel. What happens is you have the loan, which is actually called a note. Years ago, they called it a promissory note, but it just says note on the top. And then you have another document called a mortgage that says, hey, there's a loan out there. There's this note for 200 grand. We agree that that loan is secured by the house. And this mortgage document is actually the lien gets recorded with the deed. So that if they default on the note, they foreclose on the mortgage, which gives them the right to sell the home and get their money back. So the spouse is always going to sign the mortgage document, which is just like 15 pages out of the 100. It does not make them personally responsible, but it does say that their share of the house guarantees that loan. All right, so when we have a seller, that's the next thing that comes up wrong. One, you should never give me a contract without a seller's name on it. It just means you are lazy, right? If it's almost always you can access the tax records and see who the owner is, or just call the listing agent and ask who is the owner. Now, if you are on the seller's side, you need to find out who owns this house. There's a lot of times where our clients, here, Teresa Smith, right? She's divorced. And in the divorce agreement, they agree that she gets to keep the house. But guess what? The deed still has the ex's name on it. Because even though they agreed, nobody ever signed the paperwork to actually transfer the house to Teresa. So when you're taking a listing, you should find out, right, who owns it. You can look again at the tax records. If you see two names on the tax records, then that means they never took care of clearing up that issue when they did their divorce. Now, what does that mean to you? That means we're going to have to reach out to that divorced spouse and say, hey, will you cooperate in this sale, right? And they may not be that cooperative. There's a lot of animosity out there. So if you're at a listing and you see that the spouse still has an ownership interest on paper, you should tell that seller, Teresa, hey, we need to get them involved or get the lawyer involved. Frankly, they still own the house. Karen, I don't even think they can sign the listing without the spouse or the ex-spouse signing, just because legally they're still an owner, even though there's a divorce agreement that says Teresa gets it all. Legally, that was never completed. Am I right?
Correct. And sometimes a person might be Mr. Smith, deceased Mr. Smith, and therefore you need additional documentation too.
Right. One of our favorite things to do with when you run into a family or a property, well, let's just say this house has been owned not only by Teresa Smith, but Joseph Smith, her dad before that, right? And Magdalena Smith, her great grandmother. And it's been in the family forever. What we often find in those cases is that when one person died, the other person just said, well, it's my house and I'm staying here. But they never actually changed the deed to their name. And then, of course, when their father dies, now Teresa lives in there. She's like, it's my house. I'm his only child. But they never changed the deed. And now all of a sudden, when I'm in the attorney review or get the title work in, I realize Teresa doesn't own it. Joe doesn't own it. The dead grandma, even though she's dead, her estate still owns this hot property. And now we've got to go back and clean up two estates in the middle. It's gonna take time. It takes money that people often don't want to pay. Who ends up selling it? The estate of the grandma or Teresa Smith, right? So there's these issues to deal with. So please, when you're doing your listing, find out who the current owner is, which you can verify with the tax collector, right? Because it's not always who we think it is. Any questions on estates or divorce? Nope. Is everyone muted or everyone knows everything?
No questions, Marty. Thank you. I'm taking notes over here.
All right, that's fine. All right, next, property address. Anyone ever get that wrong?
No, not if you have the MLS. I mean, I'd be wrong on the MLS.
All right, well, you know what happens, and some of it is maybe a little sloppy, and some of it is not really thinking all the issues. So I will often get it where, let's just say this, 1315 West 45th Street, right? But we're buying unit number 2, right? And this doesn't reference condos, right? I don't know. Is this a 2-family house? This is a condo?
It's actually a 3-family home.
Okay, but I'm just saying, there's a lot of times I'll be doing review with a client and it's like, oh no, it's a condo. And they're just buying one of the unit numbers. Okay, so that's usually the error that I see on an address. One is missing a unit number. But the other thing I'd like you to get in the habit of doing is that if you're buying a property that has a parking space included, and I don't mean a single family house, I mean, you know, a condo, and someone's obviously paying an extra 30 to 50 grand extra for that spot, to just put on the address line +1 parking spot. I mean, if you know the spot number, even better, right? But the reason that I say to put that in there is that, one, some lawyers who don't do condos aren't going to know to add it into attorney review. But more importantly, what happens is that when the appraiser contacts you and says, can you send me over a copy of the contract? You, of course, are wonderful and you say yes. And you send them this contract. You don't send them my review letter that mentions the parking spot. And now when they do their appraisal, they don't know there's a parking spot. And of course, the home under appraises by 40,000 bucks because they don't know that there's a parking spot in it, right? So if we get in the habit of putting the parking spot on the address line, the appraiser will never miss it, and we will never have a panic attack where we have to figure out what happened and then have them revisit the appraisal to increase it for the parking. Okay? Next thing, purchase price. We don't have to move yet. Don't worry. It goes quicker as we get past this page, right? $680,000. Now, I then advise my client that in addition to the purchase price, they're going to have closing costs, right? Closing costs are everything from bank fees, title insurance, surveys, legal fees, real estate taxes, mansion taxes, you name it, right? And that, again, knowing this is a 3-family house, that in this case is probably going to run them around 2.5% of the purchase price. So they're looking at like another 15, 18,000 bucks on top of their down payment. Okay, now in this case, we show a deposit of 34,000 bucks, which is 5%. I assume we're going to actually borrow more than zero, right? This is written as a cash deal. But let's just assume that it's really 90% financing, right? So they would have put down 68,000 bucks. I've just told them they need another 16,000 on top of it, right? So they really need $84,000 to buy this house, not the 68. Do you have it? And too frequently, the answer is no. I didn't know about that, right? I can't buy this house. And I'm saying, well, all right, listen, we wrote it up as 10% down. Let's just pretend. There's really nothing that says, from the seller's perspective, it has to be 10% down, right? Let's get Loan Depot on the phone with us. Can we get a pre-approval letter at 5% down, right? Just the 34 grand. And now you've got the extra 34 grand in your pocket that you can use for all of your closing costs, right? So that's something that comes up so frequently that really you should be having that discussion with them when you're writing this up. Okay, now I have a closing cost estimate sheet. I'll, what's the best way for me to send that to you, Karen? Should I just email that to you and you'll upload it or something?
Email it to me and then I can have John Carlos send it to everybody.
I've never seen that.
Let me just see.
Now I can download it and then I can upload it so everybody can get a chance to see it.
Karen, yeah, closing costs. All right, so I'll do that as we're talking here. All right, so next thing is deposit. Now, in this case, again, we have no deposit attached. But if you can see actually on the bottom of the screen, line 57 at the very bottom shows that that deposit is due 10 days after attorney review, right? Everyone see that? So of course I'm asking my client, you got $34,000 due in 10 days. Do you have that money available in 10 days? And what's their answer, right? Oh, it could be anything. It could be, oh, well, that's a gift from my mother, right? Well, does your lender know, right? Because if there's a gift, they have to approve that there's going to be a gift. They need a document called a gift letter with certain requirements on it that only certain relatives or whatever are allowed to give. So we need to know about that, right? Is your mother going to give that gift up front in 10 days? Or were they planning to give it at the closing? Right? Sometimes the answer is, you know, I really don't want to give them 34 grand because it's going to force me to liquidate certain stocks, and I'm gonna get hit with penalties before I even know if the house is gonna go through. You know, I've got 15 grand liquid right now, I could do without penalty. Can I just give the 15 now, and then I'll give the rest at closing so I don't have tax penalties or whatever, right? So the thing is this, from my experience, and by the way, Karen, I did send you that attachment, but from my experience, you don't have to look right now, I'm looking at this contract. Anyway, from my experience, if we put in an offer that said $15,000, right, the seller wouldn't have gotten upset. 15 grand is still a good amount of money, okay? And they would have accepted it. But when you put in an offer that says, pick me, I've got 34,000 attached. And now in attorney review, I'm changing that to be 15. Now the seller's like, what's going on here, right? You tell me one story and then you change it to something else and they're not happy. So if we can just get these numbers right in the beginning, I find that it just makes the transaction smoother. Okay. Any questions on deposits or gift letters or lenders or anything?
I have one, Marty. Now, remember you said they don't have, if they don't have all the money, we can either change the down payment, but what about adding a seller's concession?
Well, adding a seller's concession is, let's assume, when I said let's switch to 5% instead of 10%, Loan Depot says, you can't afford to borrow the extra 34 grand, your debt ratios are off or something like that, right? So no, we can't do it. Now the question is, all right, what are our options to try to save this deal? So one of the options would be, again, we say, all right, we need 15 grand extra somewhere. What we can do is, assuming the seller will agree to it, is we increase the purchase price from the 680, excuse me, to 695, right? 15 grand extra. That increases the deposit by, 5% of that extra 15 grand, whatever, 750 bucks. It'll increase the mortgage amount by 14,250 or something like that, right? And then the seller agrees to give us back that 15,000 at closing by paying 15,000 of our costs for us. Now, why would a seller not agree to that? The problem to the seller is, let's assume this house was listed for 680. Now we're gonna all assume that it's gonna appraise for 680. I've just overinflated the price of the home by 15 grand to 695. Are we gonna go through all this and 30 days from now, it doesn't appraise and now we're killing the deal anyhow, right? So more often than not, my clients say, I can get the 15 grand if I need to, but I'd rather not. And I find that if I put into my seller's concession language to say, hey, we'll put in the concession, but we agree as long as it appraises for the 680, we'll still buy the house. Okay. Now I have found that in this market, most appraisers are aware that everything is bidding wars and things are going above asking. And honestly, a majority of these deals are appraising above the original asking price, even when our offers are 40 or 60 grand over asking. But that's no guarantee to our buyer. Our buyer has to be able to afford to take the risk on waiving the 15. So did that help or did I just make it worse?
Nope, that helped. Anybody else had a question as far as seller's concession? Contribution, same difference. Then I guess we're good. We can move on.
All right. And now I see you stuck something in here that I guess is just to try to get me to talk about it.
Well, this is an actual contract. I generally use my live stuff, Marty, so.
Well, well, then
Now, since it's there, you can explain to everybody what a 1031 exchange is.
well, thank you very much. Okay, so this deal, as we saw a minute ago, said that it's a cash offer, no mortgage, right? And the reason is that this one is a cash offer, no mortgage, is because this buyer had just recently sold their home. Okay, and from the proceeds of their sale, they wanted to take advantage of a tax shelter. Because we're just going to assume that the person buying was an investor. They sold their home for obviously more than $700,000. And let's just say they bought their home for $500,000. So they had a $200,000 profit on a quick flip. So they don't want to pay income taxes on that 200 grand. So there's a section of the IRS tax code. It's section 1031. And if you look in the middle of this page, line 61, you see it says 1031 exchange attorney. Okay. So the way it works for the IRS is if you sell a home and the proceeds of that home get sent directly to this 1031 exchange company, right? Like you can't touch it. You're the seller. The money goes to this company. It sits in their trust account. And you buy another home within a few months, right? Same buyer, same everything. They'll then release that money to use for the purchase. And basically what you did was you converted one house into the shape of another house. You never touched the money in between. So you're not going to owe any income taxes for this year. Somewhere in the future, you might sell that home and take the cash, and then you'll owe taxes. But if you just keep moving it from one house to another, you actually never pay income taxes. Okay, so the 1031 exchange company will give a statement of account, just like a bank account. So when you're putting in a cash offer and the seller says, give me proof of funds, it's going to be a letter from the 1031 company saying, I've got 700 grand in my account on behalf of the buyer, which I forget her name. All right. So I know that's a more complicated theory and issue out there. I just wanted you, or Karen wanted you to be aware of it. So you know that these things exist. If you do have a seller who's making a quick, large profit, and they ask you, is there anything I could do not to pay taxes? One, you don't want to give legal advice, financial advice, and tax advice. You're a realtor, all right? I would just want you to be aware of the issue so you can say, yes, there are things to be done. Marty Brodsky is the guy to call. Call the lawyer. He'll talk through certain issues with you and put you in touch with the right people, right? But you don't necessarily want to give any kind of legal advice. One of the main things on page 1 that we didn't go through, and we don't need to scroll back, Karen, says to your clients that you are a realtor and you cannot give legal advice. Another reason why they should hire a lawyer is because there's a lot of stuff you can't give them advice on. And that's for your protection more than anybody.
Can I ask a question?
Please have a question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Karen. Lauren, and feel free to say you can't answer that because you're not a tax professional at any time. Can you do more than one 1031 exchange in the course of your lifetime? I assume yes.
Yeah, you can constantly. That's what I say. Do it again and again and again and again and again.
That's what I figured. Let's say you do, I don't know, 20 1031 exchange. You started with that $200,000 house. Now you ended up with a $2.5 million property at the end that you bought for $200,000. When you sell that $2.5 million property that you bought at $2 million,
Right, for 200.
are they doing that cost basis on the $200,000 or on that original $200,000 house?
It's the original money in plus any additional money. Because a lot of times you might, like you bought it for 200, you sold it for 5. right? Then you buy another house for 7. So you put in another 200 grand. So now your cost basis is really 400 grand, right?
Yeah.
As you keep adding or you renovate or whatever. But the other thing that rich people do who have these problems is that there's also a section of the code that deals with if you die while you own it, your children inherit with a stepped up basis, and then you never owe any income taxes.
Say that last sentence after with a stepped up basis. Say that again.
Well, then they won't owe any income taxes because they inherited it at the current value.
Ah,
So you,
So nobody never pay any income tax, the
Right.
person who
So it's-
now is deceased, nor the inheritance.
right. So it's only when you take the cash out to use. But the other thing you'll learn is you can't change the ownership. Like if you said, I owned it in my name, but now I'm buying like a 20-unit building and I want to put it into an LLC so I have protection from all these tenants. You've just changed who the owner is. And now you got a tax consequence. So whatever it's in to begin with, it must always remain in. You cannot add additional people as owners. Like now you're gonna go for a bigger building, your brother joins you. Nah, just busted it. Everything must remain the same. And then there's no event, no taxable event. It's just carried, your gains are carried forward.
You gotta get rich people problems then.
Exactly. These are rich people problems. All right, next, even though this is a cash deal, I'm going to talk about mortgages because there are honestly a lot of times that when you prepare this contract, you accidentally put the cash, the mortgage amount on the cash line because you just hit the tab one extra time, right? And I'm correcting cash deals to make them mortgage deals. And our buyers, I can tell you universally, when I call them and I say, oh, it's a cash deal, it's right on the contract, your initials are a ½ inch away from it. Didn't you notice? Every single person says, I don't read it, right? Now with the DocuSign, it's like the iTunes agreement. You just flip through, yes, 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 yes. They never read it. And trust me, if we've got a deal that we got accepted that was cash and now we're saying, oops, it's mortgage, they're calling their second best offer to see, right? So let's not be sloppy on that. I'd like to, if our mortgage rep is on the line with us, right?
No, she's not. It's just a picture.
Just a picture, son of a bitch. Can I do that? All right. Let me just say this because I just had this happen again to me today. And it's sort of a management of information problem. There's a lot of times that we put in an offer and we're checking off on line 75 that it's a conventional mortgage. And then for whatever reason, as the loan's going through the process, it turns out that our buyer is not going to get approved for a conventional mortgage. And the mortgage rep on their own changes the loan to FHA, which has more relaxed guidelines. And our client would get approved for that. And of course, the mortgage rep just shoots you off an email that says, hey, here's the FHA addendum. Send it to the seller to get signed. And of course, you just bounce it because you're not even thinking it through. And now the seller gets this addendum with no warning that basically says, well, we're not going conventional, we're going FHA, right? And the panic goes off and the warning bells go off and everybody's concerned and freaking out, right? And that happened to me today. And then I get on the phone with the mortgage rep and it turned out that our client had a foreclosure on their record that got cleared up. They've actually already done the appraisal. The mortgage rep has actually given me the mortgage commitment tomorrow or Friday. Everything's fine, and we're gonna be able to close within 2 weeks, right? So normally when I get the information first, and this is what I want you to do, is before I tell the seller anything, I'm speaking to the mortgage rep. Because now what's gonna happen on tomorrow, right? Tomorrow I get a mortgage commitment that says the home appraised. And I'm gonna send it to the seller and say, hey, we have our commitment. We can close in 2 weeks. One of the conditions is we need the seller to sign this FHA amendatory clause, but we don't have to worry because we already have the commitment and the appraisal. We're all good. Is the seller gonna blink? Is the seller gonna care? The seller's gonna sign it, right? Panic averted. So I'm just saying, look at the things we get, right? Call me in between if there's any concern. When we just bounce emails to the other side is when things blow up, right? Or have a risk of blowing up. So just know that there'll be a lot of times with our clients where they start conventional, it might have to switch FHA. Your first call should be to the mortgage rep and to me, so we can figure out why did that switch and what's the best way to get the seller to agree to the switch. Because by the way, when a mortgage rep says we can't go conventional, we're going FHA, that's a denial of the mortgage, right? Their loan application was conventional was denied. If that happens 10 days into this deal, technically we need to tell the seller we got denied our loan. Will you let us switch to conventional? And the seller could say, no, deal dead, I'm relisting it,
FHA.
right? I'm sorry, yeah. So we got to deal with all that, and we should do it in an educated, controlled fashion in this market to hold it together, because sellers just feel like they'll kill it for anything because their next deal will be a higher price anyway. Why take the risk? So please control it. I know it's tough when we get stuff on our phones. We just we see the first line and we just forward it, you know. Watch out when it comes to the mortgage issues. Okay. Next thing on here, close date, line 94, January 28th. Well, I hope you wrote this contract today. Are we closing in 16 days, right?
We ain't have a Tony review. We ain't closing.
I get mortgages where we're closing 30 days, is the close date's 30 days from now, and it's a mortgage deal. Either way, what I'm explaining to my clients about the close date is, does January 28th mean we're closing on January 28th? No. That date will end up an estimated close date, which means either the buyer or seller can delay for approximately 2 weeks without penalty at a minimum. So January 28th, right, could turn into February 12th or whatever, right? 11th. Is that okay? Or are you going to be homeless at the end of January, right? Like, these are my questions from my clients. I'm warning them. Don't lock in your interest rate on your loan for January 28th, right? Lock it in for February 15th, just in case, right? Because if we get to January 28th and your rate lock expired, either they're going to a higher interest rate and rates have been going up, or they're going to have to pay $800, $1,200, whatever, to extend that rate. And even if the seller is the one who delayed it, if the seller delays to February 10th, do they owe a penny? No, because they delayed within the permitted time frame. Now, when I say that it's a minimum of the 2 weeks, the reason is this. It's really a 2 week notice, a 10-day notice that a party has to give to the other side that says, hey, we got to the close date, you weren't ready, here's my notice, you must close within those 10 days or you're in breach of contract. Now, I can serve that notice on January 28th because my client says to do it. Or sometimes my client wasn't actually ready on January 28th either, right? He was still cleaning stuff up on his mortgage. And he's not really ready till February 4th on his side. I can't serve that notice until we're actually ready. So if I serve that notice on February 4th, they have 10 days from that date. Is the date of notice, not the contract date. Now,
One question we had before, does that include weekends or business days, that 10 days?
okay, so, and this is the thing. My attorney review letter, when I represent the buyer, I put it in there as 10 calendar days. If it's silent, it's assumed to be 10 business days. Now, I don't tell my buyers, you've got 10 days. I always tell them 14 days, even though I'm going to narrow it down. Because you know your clients, when you tell them something, they take that like that's the gospel, right? So I usually prepare them for an extra few days as far as them making their moving plans or mortgage plans or whatever it might be. Especially now we've got issues with back with COVID and home inspectors coming out, you know, CO inspections. I know we're in Jersey City, we don't have them, but in other towns, if you're out there, we're running into issues. If you're going out to Essex County, to Trenton and East Orange, and it's a nightmare. And we're back to closing with temporary COs and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that can make that date not happen. Even if the buyer and seller want it to happen, there's other things that get in the way. Okay, so bottom line is we should prepare our clients that whatever date we put on there, that's not the date, right? That's a goal we're all looking for. But figure that plus a couple weeks. All right, next. Items included in the sale. That would be that line 115. So this apartment only comes with stoves. There's no refrigerator, dishwasher, sinks, air conditioners, right? There is nothing in this house except for freestanding stoves. Is that it, Karen?
Well, it's tenant occupied.
Now, one of the things that I do, and I don't think most lawyers do this, honestly, maybe you've run into it, but I haven't seen it. Is one of the good things about COVID for me is that there's now so many photographs online of a house. So when I do attorney review, I pull up that listing and I'm basically doing a walkthrough on the house. And I'm looking for what's called a fixture. A fixture is anything that's attached to the ceiling or the wall, but can be removed with a screwdriver. So when I see a washer dryer in a home, is a washer dryer attached to the wall? It's actually not attached to the wall. It's just plugged into an outlet and screwed into a hose. It's not attached. Your refrigerator looks huge, but it's just on wheels with a power outlet. It's basically a giant TV. That's not attached, right? But I'll see flat screen TVs bolted to the wall. Now that's attached. Now, no one really expects a seller to leave their TV in the home, but I'm going to ask them to leave their mounting bracket attached to that wall because there's 4 big bolts into that wall. And if you remove those bolts, you're going to have 4 holes in that wall. We're not talking nail hooks. And then it comes to patch and paint. So when I'm a seller, I tell all my sellers, leave the stupid bracket. You'll go buy a nicer, newer, better one for $60. It's less than the cost of you patching and painting that wall. Because you really can't just paint an area that's, 2 foot square. It won't match the rest of the wall. So now you got to paint the wall, but that one won't match the next wall. So you're gonna paint the room. So just leave your stupid bracket, right? But you'll see shelves mounted to the wall, right? Are those included? Are window treatments included? Window air conditioners. Window air conditioners go in and out with the season. Do you expect those to stay or not stay, right? So when you're going through your listings, you know, keep an eye out for those kinds of things, okay? One of the things I'll notice in my walkthroughs is we'll often see an attic that they converted to a bedroom, right? It's got the dormered ceilings, you know, the angled ceilings, barely a bed in it. And of course, what do you see? Is there a heat source in there? No. There's like a plug-in radiator, electric thing there, right? That should be an indicator to you that this probably wasn't converted with permits and approvals, right? A bedroom really needs to have a heat source. It needs a window, it needs a closet, right? When we go up this staircase and we see these ceilings that you're gonna bang your head on, a little tiny window in the middle, and no heat, no air conditioning, and the outlets and extension cord coming through the door, guess what? That is not a legal bedroom, okay? Now we can check the tax records. There's something that most towns refer to as a tax card. I don't know if you're an example of one of those, Karen.
No.
But it's not just the thing that says, here's what it's assessed for, and here's what your taxes are. It'll sort of be a very simple outline of the house and the rooms. It says how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, you know, finished basement or not. And you can get that from the tax assessor's office to see, is this really a 4-bedroom? Or is it a 3 and they actually finished the attic without permits and approvals? Okay, so those are the type of things I'm seeing when I'm doing attorney review. So you should take a look at it. What most agents put in on this items included in the sale is they put in at least to say, as per the MLS. Now I'm fine with you saying as per the MLS, because that'll cover everything in the listing. But then please, 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 when you set up your DocuSign, attach the MLS to the DocuSign, because otherwise I don't get it. The other lawyer doesn't get it, and we don't know what we're actually agreeing to. All right, any questions on items included, or just things that you might notice walking through a house and setting off concerns for you? Nope, nope, okay. Let's scroll down. Keep going.
You don't want the certificate of occupancy?
Oh, you don't have one in Jersey City, but hold on a
So we
second.
leave that amount blank, or what amount should we be putting on line number 144?
Yeah, I started typing, but I'm in this Zoom meeting. So as soon as I'm done with that, I'll call you back. Bye. Oh, yeah. All right. I listen, if you're on the sales side, on this certificate of occupancy, I don't like it being blank. So for everyone out there, if you go into a town other than Jersey City, right? The city comes out and they do an inspection to give an occupancy certificate that says it's safe to live in the house. Now they are looking at safety issues. For them, that's windows have to operate so you can get out in case of fire. You need handrails on staircases. The steps shouldn't be loose, right, or crumbling. Smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, lights in the hallways, right? There's all these kinds of things. And a lot of times The CO inspector is the one to say, this is an illegal bedroom, right? Or they'll notice the hot water, there's a brand new hot water heater, but there's no permit in the file. Nobody ever pulled a hot water heater permit. Okay? And they may fail it and say these repairs have to be made. Now, if that line is blank and the lawyer doesn't change it in attorney review, what it says is that the seller is obligated to make repairs up to 1.5% of the sales price. So on 700 grand, that's $10,000 that they have to make. All right. So your sellers never want to agree to that. So $1,000 is a fine number to just have in there as sort of an automatic obligation. That might change in review anyhow, but don't leave it blank. Okay. Now, have you talked to your people about Oprah requests?
We've had a little dialogue, but not a lot of dialogue. What the best part about open requests now that I mentioned at the last team meeting, if the buyer agent pull it now, we're not liable for any mistakes or updates that's not on it.
All right. I think you should ask your sellers to get it. Okay.
What, I'm sorry, what is that called?
Oprah. It's an
Oh, Oprah, okay, okay.
Yes, an open records request. And the thing is, what it's going to give you is a list of all the permits and approvals that have been pulled on the property. Now, a lot of times people say, oh, well, it came back clear. There's nothing open. But that means your new hot water heater, your new furnace, your conversion of your attic to your bedroom, right? No one ever pulled permits for any of that work, right? And to me, if I'm a listing agent, I'm going to be telling my client, hey, you need to go pull these permits because the buyer side is going to find this out now, right? And now we're going to have problems because you did this work without permits. Like, I know I do a lot of these reviews, and you'll see, and again, this is more in the suburbs, there's something called a cape. Does everyone know what a cape house is? It's like a little tiny 1-story square house that you see more like down the shore or something like that, right? And of course, they'll build a second floor on top of it. You know, in Westfield, and now all of a sudden it's a $900,000 house because it's a 2-story cape, whatever. But one thing I'll see in these renovated capes is an open floor plan, right? Kitchen is wide open to the family room and blah, blah, blah. They put the bedrooms upstairs. Trust me, open floor plans did not exist when they built capes. They just removed walls. And now the question is, are there permits and approvals? So many times in those homes, the inspector will see when the wall was removed, they didn't beef up the beam, and now it's sagging in the middle, and the floor above it is sagging, right? So certain things, you know, you'll learn over the years. When you see it, you'll be like, yeah, there should have been a permit for that. Like, that don't look right to me, right? So if I'm on the listing side, I might ask my seller when I'm taking the listing for them to file for a open records request. And they can review it with just me or whatever if you don't want to be involved in it. On the buy side, you definitely want to make sure that you're using a lawyer that knows to pull them and knows to request them. Okay,
I have
because
a question.
yeah.
Martin Ramiz again with another question. In the Heights here, there's a lot of 2 families with attics that people treat as, you know, they're illegal. They're illegal 3 families. People just
Bonus apartments,
right?
yes.
Or garage. I've seen a guy with a garage
Uh-huh.
who had an apartment. It's like he turned his garage into an apartment. He turned a little room in the back to another apartment. He had a 2-family. He made it to like a crazy 5-family. Now, when this guy goes to sell it, any repairs, things that he's done without permits, how does he then, after the fact, for the legal stuff that he did, meaning like things that would be allowed had he pulled permits, like, removing a wall and putting structural pillars there. How does he does he apply for permits for work that had already been done that he didn't pull for?
Yes, that's what he do. Now, sometimes, like I've had it with removing a wall, where the city said, I need as part of your application plans from an architect saying that what you beefed up there is proper, and I actually need you to open up the sheetrock so I can see what's going on in there. Because sheetrock, remember this, sheetrock is about the cheapest thing in the world. That big 4 by 8 foot sheet isn't $5. It's more money to repaint it than to rip out sheetrock and show them what's going on, right? So depending on the thing, you can file yourself. They may want your contractor, your plumber who actually did the work that you have the receipt for him to open the permit, or you just open a brand new one in your own name, okay? So he can do that, but he's not gonna get away with the illegal 3 extra family.
Yeah.
As he forgetting the city CO. Remember, if your buyer's getting a mortgage, their appraiser is gonna go out there and they're gonna check the tax records. And they're gonna say, this is a 3 family, this is a 5 family. Tax assessor says it's a 2 family. And the loan's gonna get denied before we even get to anything else, right? Until we fix it. So,
But for some of the older properties that are built like 1890s, do the records go that far back to show where all the structural walls were for someone to know?
No, they won't, right? And that's why we have like, okay, is this legit? Right, let's get an architect, right? We'll open the walls and he'll write us a report that says, I've reviewed this and it's structurally sound or blah, blah, blah. And then the city inspector will go out there and view, the open wall and see that, like, they know what building code is for today. But as far as the conversion, to multifamily, that has a lot of other issues other than just, is the home structurally sound, right? There's zoning issues, parking issues, all these other things that need municipal approval for conversion.
Thanks.
I have a question, Martin, in addition to that.
Yes.
What about seller's disclosure? Do you, if the seller has provided that document, do we need as a realtor to send it to you as well? And in terms of any permits that they've done? And
I'd like the seller's disclosure, because really we should have a couple things in there that we, like, let's assume the seller's disclosure. Like I'm dealing with one right now where it said, the home is legally a 2-family home, but they reconfigured it as a 1 because the 1 family was just living in the whole building and they just took down some doors and changed some walls and removed the kitchen because they were occupying the entire thing. So now I knew about it in attorney review. I disclosed, I said, as per the seller's disclosure, this is configured as a 1. You've got to let your lender know about it now. We're not going to reconfigure it for you to close. You have to waive this issue now and get it all approved, right? And I've had that happen where they then say, oh no, sorry, deal dead. We don't want to go for a construction loan, right? And other ones that say, yes, so let's deal with a terminal issue or a major issue up front. Like if we know that the air conditioner is broken, not only should it be in the seller's disclosure, but your lawyer should know, because my review letter should say the air conditioner is disclosed as broken and is not subject to inspections, right? Because if we don't know about it, now the buyer does a home inspection, they go, oh, AC is broken, I want $7,000. And your seller's like, but it was in my disclosure. Yeah, but it's not in the contract as being waived, right? So please, yes, send us these things, and more importantly, if there is something special in it, point it out in your cover letter, in just an email that says, here's the disclosure, this is broken, or illegal that, whatever.
Keep in mind, seller's disclosure is not mandatory in New Jersey, though, Anthony.
All right. Now, one thing I want to throw out there, in this case, we have a 3-family house. Does 3-family trigger anything in anyone's mind compared to if it said 2-family? Dun, 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 dun,
You
dun.
need a green card, not a CO.
There we go. Now,
And
a
you need a
green
3-family
card,
disclosure, which is a separate addendum to the contract.
now a green card, for those of you on here, is not a reference to an immigration form that lets you live here without Trump kicking you out of the country. The green card,
Hey, Marty.
you may have seen in the elevators or hallways, you'll see a plaque on the wall that says, this building has been inspected by the State Department of, not corrections, right? Community Affairs, DCA, Department of Community Affairs, and is, safe to be inhabited, right? You see those things usually in bigger commercial buildings, but they're actually supposed to be there in 3-family buildings too. And at least originally when they had those cards, they were printed on green paper, okay? But it's just a DCA certificate, community affairs certificate, multi-family house certificate, whatever that is. So what is that? What that means is, so when we have a certificate of occupancy, just a CO in the towns that have it, it means that every time a home is sold, the home must be re-inspected to see if it needs to be brought up to code, okay? On a green card inspection is good for 5 years, and you must get it re-inspected whether you sell your house or not every 5 years. And unlike a CO where you can call up your inspector and they come out in the next week or two, the green card, you got to call Trenton, who then communicates with a local inspector, and it could be weeks and months for them to come out. So when you take a listing, ask your client to see a copy of their DCA registration green card, right? Because they may not realize that it has expired or it's gonna expire. Hold on, I think we got a question here. That's correct. They're not required on 1 or 2 family houses.
And not for condos?
No,
That's
condo is
nothing.
a whole bunch of 1-family houses stuck together.
Thank
So
you.
Still don't need it.
How long do they typically last?
5 years.
5 years.
Instead.
If you text me your number, I will send you Mr. Moody's number so you could put in your list of contacts. So when you do come across 3 and more families, you have his direct connection to start the process or ask questions.
Now, I just put my cell phone number in the chat window. For those of you who have not worked with me before, please shoot me a text with just your name. I'll save it for you and I'll shoot you a text back. You can really reach me day, nights, weekends, right? If you're out at a meeting and you have questions with the clients, whether it's about this stuff or oil tanks or tenants or anything, you can reach out to me just like you'd reach out to Karen. I'm happy to give you my advice. Okay. All right. I guess now, I don't know why we always get this blank. Yes, I'm yelling at you, Karen.
Yeah, this is a yell. I'll take it.
Obviously, buying a 3-family house, that is an investment property. How do we know it's an investment property? It's a 1031 exchange, which means he's buying a home with tenants in it. And my next question is, all right, which of the units are occupied? All of them. How much do they pay? I think one pays $11.95, one pays, we don't know. Right? So now in my attorney review letter, I'm asking for it. I'm asking for a lot of representations on top of it, right? But we should at least have an agreement as to what the rents are, right? So we've got here tenant name. I really don't need the tenant name. Location, I like, 1, 2, 3, ABC, first, second, third, whatever. The rent amount, we should know. They often don't know the security deposit, whether it's 1 month, 1.5 months. I don't mind finding that out in attorney review. And then the term we should know, because it makes a difference whether it says month to month, and you'll just put the term, you put M/M for month to month, or whether they've got 8 months left to their term or a year left to their term or whatever. Now, the reason it makes a difference is because if we've got a tenant who's paying below market rate and they're month to month, I can explain to our client that they have the right after they close to just raise the rent. But if they've got 10 months left to their lease, they can't raise the rent until that 10 months is up, right? So when we're buying these investment properties, I'm sure we know what the rents are. We should know. If our buyer's investing in it, they should know what their profit's going to be. All right. But I can tell you, and not to make fun of Karen, but if I get 100 multifamily contracts a year, I don't know if 4 have the rents in it. I just don't understand it. So shame on you, and don't ever do it again.
I'll do better.
Okay. All right, we can scroll. This just shows to the new people that, trust me, I have agents who've been doing this for 30 years. Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody is perfect, and that's fine. So just keep us in the loop. All right. You're in the city, so we're not worried about poet systems and cesspools and septic tanks and all that fun stuff. So we can skip over that. Inspection clauses. Okay. I'm just going to really talk about one thing. Does everyone know what as is means?
Not doing no work.
What?
You're not doing no work to the property, it's as is.
Yeah. Right. I see a lot of offers where they put in paragraph 43 and it says this property is being sold as is. Right. So one, if we actually scroll through these paragraphs, you'll see that it actually already has this language in one of these paragraphs. But here's what as is means. As is means seller is not obligated to make any repairs whatsoever. However, buyer is not obligated to buy, right? Buyer gets to do a home inspection. Buyer gets to request, oh, by the way, you can stop. Line 346. Buyer acknowledges that the property is being sold in as is condition, right? So all of you who write as is, you're wasting ink. It means nothing, right? So getting back to it, buyer gets to do home inspection. Buyer gets to request repairs. Seller then can say no, they're not obligated to fix. And then buyer has the right to cancel. Now the opposite of as is really new construction, which is that seller must fix, seller must repair, seller is giving you brand new, okay? In this market, what sellers are really looking for the buyers to do is limit their rights to object, waive their rights to object, right? As is doesn't mean squat. So if your intent is to say, we're going to limit our inspections, what I usually do is I've got really 3 things that I put into my bidding war offer. So I say, 1, if there's any environmental issue, we get to complain. no limitation. Oil tanks, asbestos, lead paint, mold, which I hate, right? But all that's environmental. 2, wood destroying insects. We cannot get a mortgage without a clear termite cert. So even though a termite treatment's only $500-600, we have to have it because we can't get a loan without it, right? And then I have a third that says, like, if there's a single item that's 1,000, 750, 500, whatever number our client works with, right? That we can complain about that item. So if we said, again, let's assume this $700,000 purchase, there's multiple offers on the property, right? We want to show that we're not going to nickel and dime them. We're going to say, as long as it's less than $1,000, we can complain. Now, for me, $1,000 is what a new hot water heater is going to cost. It really costs more than that, right? So we get to complain about that kind of problem. But if there's a drip under a sink or the stupid flex hose, right? Or one of the windows doesn't lock, or it has fogging in between it, or you've got an outlet hanging out of the wall, or a loose toilet bowl. We're not killing it over those things. Even if there's 25 of those little things, we're not going to kill it. But if there's $1,000 problem, I get to ask you to fix it. And if you say no, then I get to kill it, right? Now, again, if I'm buying, the Greenville special, which is still now almost 400 grand, right? Maybe I'm waiving anything under 500 or 375, right? It's all goes into the property. And remember, before we put in these waivers, we've walked through the home. We know the condition of the home. We've seen how well it's upkept, and we know how much of this nonsense is built into the price. When there's a hole in the ceiling over the bathtub, you knew it when you put in your offer. You don't get to complain about that hole in the ceiling, right? One of the things that I've been doing to win those type of bidding wars, believe it or not, is go FHA. There's a product, and you can talk to your lender about it when you get to them, called an FHA 203K loan. And what that is, and this is only for homeowners, not investors, is it's a construction loan, a rehab loan. We'll let you buy a house where the kitchen has the bathroom has a hole in the ceiling. You got to rip out the tile in the tub and redo the kitchen, and there's little just issues because the place is just old and needs updating, right? And we basically go in that offer and we say, we waive the right to object to your kitchen and your bathroom and your whatever else is obviously ugly. But we're going to get a construction loan. So pick us, because we really limited our inspections, but now we have a more difficult mortgage. And I don't really think it's more difficult. There's some more steps to follow. But that will pay for the renovations. So does anyone have a question on that kind of stuff? I know I threw a lot of new crap out there. Nothing? Come on, Kevin, you gotta have a question. You're just staring at me for an hour with that stupid grin on your face. Say something.
How did you guess? How did you guess?
All right. This page, no big deal. Just make sure I have everybody's email addresses for the agents on it, so I know who to send my riders to.
Permission is correct on this one, which is line 588.
All right, there we go. Now, next thing you all do is you check these lovely boxes, right? Paragraph 42. So you got one for coronavirus. There's one condo I see checked all the time, right? Your lead paint. This is your 3-family, whatever, okay? And you know what I don't get in any of these? and it's not even on Karen's, is I don't get the addenda. Because when you set up your DocuSign, unless you select to attach them to the DocuSign, they don't automatically get generated and attached, right, Karen? It's a separate step to make sure they're attached,
Gotta add them in if you're gonna send it in one envelope.
okay? So the reason that it matters is, one, you'll get a lawyer who says, where's the addendum? I don't know what I'm agreeing to. Or more often than not, the mortgage company, when they're in their final review and we're all ready to close tomorrow, they go, hey, no one ever sent us the addendum. And in fact, they never even got signed because they weren't part of your DocuSign. So now you, who generated this to begin with, you have to reinitiate the whole damn thing, attaching these things for them to go around and get signed by the buyer and the seller, and then go over to the lender and their underwriter. And guess what? We're not doing tomorrow, right? We're not closing tomorrow for a stupid form that nobody even cared about in the first place. So please, I don't mind the forms. I kind of like them, right? But you got to make sure to take the separate step and attach them to your DocuSign, attach the MLS to your DocuSign, right? Because trust me, when you send it and it gets passed around, anything that's not attached doesn't end up with the lawyer and won't end up with the mortgage company either. All right, so this one we got first floor vacant. Nice. Basement free, clear, along with garbage. Okay, now I've
Garage.
just seen a garage, sorry. Normally, the language that you'll often see, and it really says the same thing, is it just says in broom swept condition. So you should know that language for all of your buyers, that when they're doing their walkthrough, the home is to be in broom swept condition. That means no garbage, no food in the refrigerator or in the cabinets, right? But they're not steam cleaning your carpets, right? They're not scouring out the stove from whatever burnt residue is in there. This is not going to be a professionally clean condition for them on the day of walkthrough to say, I want a $500 credit so Maria's cleaners can come and clean my house for me. It's broom swept condition is the standard language that they use, okay? I'm not sure what parking available for new buyer means. Okay.
So I had a situation with one of the agents where the seller didn't live on site. The buyer assumed that the parking was coming with the first floor unit because that's where he was going to be moving. But the parking actually was for one of the tenants.
Right.
So I just made sure in my, I put parking.
Right, but I don't know, like for me, I'd be asking, all right, do I have is the garage vacant? My client, and no tenants have rights to park there. Like usually when I'm going through the tenant and the lease thing, I'm asking the question when I have a garage, what tenants have the right to park in the garage, right? So we're gonna say really first floor vacant, right? Because buyer intends to personally occupy, and one garage space vacant, right? I'm asking that. Now, of course, I would have seen the whole online pictures and, you know, how many spots are there. A lot of times you got to make sure when there's a driveway between two houses, like who owns that driveway? Is that shared between the two houses to get to both backyards and both garages? I mean, these are just things on your listing side that you really want to look out for is just who owns the driveway when it's just stuck between two houses. And it doesn't look like every house has its own driveway. There's something shared. That's something we want to ask about. Attorney review to start on January 5th. Now, I assume you're putting in the offer on December 27th, but your client was going away until the 5th, so didn't want it to start while he was away, or why did we put?
Her attorney was away, so the attorney asked for us to put it in there. until he got back.
Okay. All right. I mean, again, when I'm the buyer, I wouldn't like that because that just gave them an extra, 8 days to keep marketing that house and try to find another buyer. But sometimes you do what they ask for, right? And again, if you ever get something that's unusual like that, call me up, call Karen up and say, why would they ask about this and why do we care? Right? Or should we care? But we can get really creative. And that's really it for the contract. And I'm sorry I ran long. I went past an
All
hour.
right.
Hopefully you all were learning stuff, especially Kevin with that stupid looking grin.
Anybody have any questions? Because we have the attorney on the line now, face to face.
Ah. All right, everyone. Well, really, truly, you can reach out to me. You all have my cell phone number. It's for you. Don't give them out to your client. I'll give you the office number if they need to reach me. But you guys really can reach me day, nights, weekends to help any way I can. Okay?
Or for the late joiners, can you just quickly just tell, because I'm in Jersey City, what you handle overall? Are the things you don't take on as part of your practice, things you do?
I mean, I just do real estate. That's it. I mean, that last 2 years, I did over 400 deals a year. Like, I don't have enough time to do other stuff, and I'm happy focusing on this. I've been doing this for over 25 years. I'd say that I handle landlord-tenant, except I don't think there really is landlord-tenant law right now. It's more about advice on how to negotiate and pay your tenants to leave more than any possibility of really evicting tenants. And most of the time when a landlord calls me, their initial reaction is, why should I give that deadbeat a penny to get out? It's wrong. After we go through the full business analysis of what their benefit would be in getting rid of them today and being able to sell today, versus waiting what could easily be 8-9 months of additional lost rent and possible prices going down as interest rates go up and damage that could be caused. Like, even though we hate that person, if we give them $5,000, $10,000, isn't that the best thing for you? Put aside your hatred for that person. And there's a full agreement and a process to do through that, because we don't want to give a tenant a dime until they're actually out. But usually once we're done with our conversation, they agree, all right, let me pay this guy and get him out.
But
Right.
even though the eviction moratorium's over, I know a neighbor who had tenants from hell for 2 years, police there every day. So
Yeah.
as soon as the eviction moratorium was over, this guy's magically somehow got them out in 30 days. Are you not finding that to be the case, Jersey City, where it still takes?
I'm not finding that to be the case. One, there's a backlog of cases to even get into court, right?
Yeah.
And again, listen, there's the people who leave because they finally got their letter and they're like, okay, I'll leave, right? And then there's the people who say, like what I like to say is that tenants are like inmates. Like, they know the law better than everybody. And they know the backlog. And they know that, well, if I fight it, it's going to take me 3 months to get to court. And then what? You think I'm out? No, right? You're going to have to call the sheriff to get me out. And as the sheriff has nothing better to do than to drag out my COVID-infested family along with the other 16,000 people in Hudson County? Nah, I can probably drag this thing out till September. So you know what? I'll make it to the summer, then I'll move before the school year starts, right? So that's the problem. We don't know who we're gonna get, right? And obviously, I'm not saying we start with our tenant necessarily at 5,000 or 10,000, right? But if you can get them out quickly, like I know when I do get to court and I negotiate with the tenant who gets out in 30 days, it's usually because we've reached an agreement at the courthouse that says, you owe me 15 grand of rent, right? You haven't paid me. I'll tell you what, if you get out by the end of January, I'll waive the 15 grand because I know I ain't gonna collect it anyhow. But if you're not out by the end of January, you cause any damage, then I'm suing you for the 15 grand. Right? And that gets them out quickly, but that means you're at court and you got people that show up and people who are ready to go. But if they want to play the game, I think most people know they can make it to the summer.
Thank you so much, Marty. We appreciate your time. We know you got work to
Thank
do,
you, everybody.
and
I'll talk
we'll
to
see you on the next round, maybe back in office in a few months.
you. Wonderful.
All
Bye now.
Bye-bye. So I know we had a long time, an hour and 30 minutes in. I am not gonna go through the command process. I promise I'll go through that the next time we on. But if you need to complete the command part, there is YouTube videos that you can watch if you do have a transaction, or we could jump on a one-on-one and go through it one-on-one in a Zoom by ourselves.
All right, thank you, Karen.
Welcome, everybody. Enjoy their day.
Thank you,
Bye.
Karen.
Check your emails. I need that video.
I already sent that in WhatsApp. You're late.
Oh, thank you. Bye.